friends! Today, I'm here to take you on another journey through time with music. Have you ever found yourself listening to a song that, even if it isn't part of your personal history, transports you to a time that feels incredibly familiar? It's as if, in some mysterious way, it's woven into your DNA, evoking an inexplicable longing for moments and places you've never experienced. Well, my friends, Forever Young by the iconic German synth-pop band Alphaville is one of those songs that carries with it a blend of nostalgia and reflection. Let's travel back to 1984, at the height of the Cold War. It was a time when the world lived in uncertainty, with the constant fear that a single action could trigger a nuclear catastrophe. And it was from this fear that one of the most impactful songs of the 80s was born. Let Us Die Young, or Let Us Live Forever. We don't have the power, but we never say never. But what many don't realize is that this is not just a simple song about eternal youth. It's a silent cry, reflecting the spirit of an era when everyone hoped for the best, but was prepared for the worst. Are you gonna drop the bomb or not? Sings Marion Gold, the lead singer of Alphaville. This band didn't just give a voice to a generation with Forever Young, but they also etched their name in music history with other anthems like Big in Japan, Sounds Like a Melody, and Dance With Me. And do you know what makes this story even more fascinating? Before achieving success, Marion Gold's life was like something out of a movie. Expelled from military service, he ended up living on the streets of Berlin, homeless and directionless, until music found him and changed everything. Today, we're diving deep into the story behind this band that, with its unmistakable sound, defined an era. So, if you're like me and love to relive the classics, go ahead and hit that like button and share this video with your friends. Come along, because this journey through time is just getting started. On May 26, 1954, in Herford, Germany, Hartwig Schierbaum was born, a young man who seemed destined to follow in his father's footsteps in the family heating business. However, Hartwig, who would later become known as Marion Gold, had other plans. From a young age, he was drawn to music and the arts. This difference in interests led to tensions at home. The arguments between father and son were intense, a result of conflicting expectations and a young man determined to forge his own path. After high school, Marion was called up for military service. But, much like at home, he couldn't conform to the strict norms of military life. Feeling persecuted and out of place, he was eventually dishonorably discharged, a mark he would carry with him, but one that also freed him to pursue his true dreams. As time passed, Marion began to realize that he was different, and more than that, he wanted to be different. The weight of family expectations and the constant fights became unbearable, and the only escape he found was to run away. He fled from his family, from the arguments, and from a life he didn't want. Marion's life was far from easy, and perhaps that's why his music resonates so deeply. After being dishonorably discharged from the military in the 1970s, he made his way to West Berlin, a city that was vibrant yet unforgiving. Surviving there was no simple task, and at one point, Marion found himself living on the streets, squatting in abandoned buildings alongside other rebellious youths. It was a rebellion against the older generation. I wanted to swim free, so I said goodbye to the benefits of capitalism, he told the German site Bild. At the time, West Berlin seemed like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie, cut off from the rest of the world by a wall that symbolized both political division and the separation of realities. The city was a unique, fascinating, yet simultaneously decaying scene. Its atmosphere was unparalleled, a place where the nightlife never stopped. Drugs, prostitution, and a relentless pursuit of immediate pleasure permeated the streets and clubs of the city. Marion, like many other young people of that time, was drawn to this swamp, as he himself described it, in an almost irresistible way. There was something disturbingly captivating about that chaos, a mix of fascination and decay that consumed him while simultaneously inspiring him. In the city of Münster, after leaving the hustle and bustle of Berlin, Marion finally found the path he had been searching for. Among a collective of artists called the Nelson Community, he met Bernhard Lloyd and Frank Mertens. Together, they initially formed the band Forever Young, which would later become Alphaville. Now, imagine this. None of them knew how to play instruments. Marion, in an interview with the Washington Times in 2017, revealed that in the 80s, the band didn't perform live because they simply didn't know how to play. They relied on drum machines and sequencers that had emerged at the time. The existence of Alphaville was only possible thanks to these new technologies. As Marion said, "We were basically music fans. We'd sit in front of the stereo, listening to our favorite artists and dreaming of making our own music. And suddenly, with these machines, it became possible. Our ideas, the melodies in our heads, came to life, and the instruments played them. We also refused to do big tours with playback or additional musicians because that didn't fit our hippie ideology. To us, it felt like a lie." With this newfound creative freedom, the band finally adopted the name Alphaville, inspired by a fictional city from a 1965 French film. Marion's musical aesthetic was heavily influenced by icons like David Bowie and Bryan Ferry. Alphaville's first show took place on December 31st, 1982 at the Forum, a club in the city of Angers. That day, about 450 people witnessed the birth of something special, even though the band was still unknown. This was partly due to Bernhard Gössling, a local DJ who was already playing Alphaville's new songs on cassette tapes for the audience, creating an anticipation that was completely fulfilled. In the early 80s, the members of Alphaville were still ordinary people, each following their routines in jobs that had nothing to do with music. However, in 1983, fate took its first turn. The band signed their first international contract with WEA Records, and in just 2 weeks of intense work, they created 2 tracks that would define their careers: Big in Japan and Forever Young. At that time, Alphaville still had a 4th member, bassist Fried Gerber, who ended up not contributing much to the recordings and was therefore asked to leave the band. Interestingly, the record label didn't want Forever Young to be the band's first single. They preferred to start with Big in Japan, a choice that soon proved to be the right one. According to Marion, the song is about the drug scene in Berlin in the late 70s. It tells a fictional story about a couple of lovers who try to escape drugs but never succeed. They imagine themselves in a sort of dreamland where they are sober, but they never actually get there. It's quite a tragic story. But let's step back a bit to the time between recording and the release of their first major hit. Marion, Frank, and Bernhard were still living ordinary lives, trying to stay grounded while dreaming big. Marion worked in a restaurant kitchen where he prepared meatballs and other dishes. He clearly remembers the moment when Big in Japan started playing on the radio. "I was working in the kitchen and this song played all the time on the radio. At some point, my boss couldn't take it anymore and kicked me out. You can't work here anymore because your song is always on the radio and I don't want to see you here." By the end of February 1984, Big in Japan had already entered the charts, reaching the 72nd position. But it was in April of that year that everything changed. The song reached the top of the charts in Germany, marking the beginning of a meteoric rise for Alphaville. Shortly after, their second single, Sounds Like a Melody, made it into the top 10 across much of Europe. Their debut album, titled Forever Young, was released in the fall of 1984. And before that, the title track had already made its mark as the band's 3rd single. It quickly became a top 5 hit, giving Alphaville their last appearance in the top 100 of the UK singles charts and reaching the 65th position in the United States. The album was an absolute success, earning platinum and gold status in Germany, Sweden, Norway, and Switzerland. Forever Young wasn't just a song about wanting to live forever. It represented the cry of a generation trying to cope with a world full of uncertainty and fear, using music as a way to express their anxieties and hopes. To understand the lyrics of Forever Young, it's essential to have some historical context. Between 1947 and 1991, the world lived under the shadow of the Cold War, a conflict without direct battles but filled with constant tension that could explode at any moment. Nuclear weapons hung like a silent threat over humanity, with the fear that they might be used by the main players in this global drama, the United States and the Soviet Union. It was precisely this atmosphere of uncertainty and fear that inspired Marian Gold, Bernhard Lloyd, and Frank Mertens to compose Forever Young. The song, often interpreted as a wish for eternal youth, actually carries a much deeper and darker message, that of a generation preparing for the worst, ready to die young in the ever-present possibility of nuclear annihilation. Let's dance in style, let's dance for a while. Heaven can wait, we're only watching the skies, hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Are you gonna drop the bomb or not? This verse, which opens the song, takes on a new meaning when we realize that the desire to dance, party, and live intensely is paired with the bitter awareness that everything could end at any moment. The lyrics continue to draw us into their reflection. Can you imagine when this race is won? Turning our golden faces into the sun, praising our leaders, we're getting in tune. The music's played by the madmen. Here, the song confronts us with human helplessness in the face of a fate controlled by so-called madmen, the world leaders whose decisions could, in the blink of an eye, change the course of history and the lives of millions. The music video for Forever Young was filmed in an old castle in southern England, which was formerly a psychiatric institution. The meteoric success of Alphaville's debut album could have been the end of the band. The album was such an overwhelming success that, by 1984, the musicians had become financially independent, which could have allowed them to retire comfortably. But, as we know, fame is a double-edged sword. What seemed liberating actually placed Alphaville under enormous pressure. How do you move forward after reaching the top so quickly? This pressure was too much for Frank Mertens, who decided to leave the band at the end of 1984. According to Marian Gold, after a recording session for a Belgian broadcaster, Frank confessed that the fame and its demands were simply overwhelming. He was replaced by Ricky Ecolette. 2 years later, in 1986, Alphaville released their second album, Afternoons in Utopia. With a richer and more ambitious sound, the trio brought to life singles like Dance With Me, Universal Daddy, and Jerusalem, all supported by a team of studio musicians who helped expand the band's sound. In 1989, the third album, The Breathtaking Blue, was released, a work in which the band collaborated with producer Klaus Schulze. This album was a sonic experiment, adding strings, saxophone, trumpet, double bass, electric, and even acoustic guitars to Bernhard Lloyd's already familiar synthesizers. The most successful single from this album was Romeos, which became a moderate hit in Germany. The 1990s brought new challenges. Marian tried to pursue a solo career, releasing 2 albums, but the success of the 1980s did not repeat itself. Fortunately, Alphaville managed to overcome their internal differences and reunite, continuing to make music to this day. The band went through several lineup changes over the years. Ricky Ecolette left the group in 1997, while Martin Lister joined in 1995 and remained until his death in 2014. Bernhard Lloyd, one of the founding members, stayed until 2003 when he decided to focus on his career as an electronic music producer. Today, Alphaville continues their musical journey with Marian Gold as the only remaining member of the original lineup. At 70 years old, he still takes to the stage, driven by his love for music and the connection with his audience. Being on stage and communicating with people not only touches my heart, but also becomes an addiction. You want to keep going, even at my age, he says. In 2022, Alphaville released their latest studio album, Eternally Yours. And for those who thought the band would be a thing of the past, a surprise was in store. Forever Young returned to the music charts 40 years later, thanks to the TikTok phenomenon. The song became a trend with emotional videos of people reflecting on the passage of time and the loss of youth, some garnering millions of likes. Bernhard Lloyd couldn't hide his emotion at seeing the song resurge with such force. "Keep using it and stay forever young," he said. Marion, in turn, joined in on the fun, participating in the trend with homemade family footage. It's worth mentioning that the star has been married 4 times and has 7 children. And so, my friends, Alphaville continues to write its story, showing that even after so many decades, their music still has the power to unite generations and transcend time. If you enjoyed today's content, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your music-loving friends. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end, and see you in the next video.